I had a question from a viewer this week that was interesting, and I don't believe I've actually covered this topic before. And the question was, is a forward-firing subwoofer better than a down-firing subwoofer? And why would one be better than the other? As with all things audio and all things loudspeaker and all things acoustics, there is no one answer to that question. It depends. And why it depends is I think we all realize that bass is one of the trickiest things to reproduce in a typical room in a typical home. It's so dependent on room size, room dimensions, ratios of the dimensions, amount of damping, construction, whether it's a concrete floor or it's a suspended wood floor, whether it's drywall, on wood studs, on metal studs, or whether it's concrete walls, etc., etc. It goes on and on. But there are too many variables in different types of rooms to be able to say anything one way or the other when it comes to low frequencies. And, you know, this question about forward firing versus down firing subwoofers is no different. What I can tell you is, in most cases, because a down firing subwoofer, the woofer is usually a few inches off of the floor surface based on the height of the feet on the bottom of the cabinet, that you are absolutely going to get some base loading from the floor of the room because of the proximity of that woofer to the floor. It's no different than having your main speakers pushed right up against the wall or in the corner or whatever. You've noticed probably if you've tried that mid-bass picks up and it can get, you know, a little bit drony, a little bit boomy sounding. Now, a well-designed down-firing subwoofer can perform really, really well. And in some rooms, down-firing will couple better to the room and be loaded better to give you more uniform and smoother bass. But in other rooms, that's not going to be the case. It may be too much of a good thing, so to speak. And in that case, you want to stick to a more common forward-firing subwoofer. Now, one thing I will also point out is my experience has always been that if you're going to be using the subwoofer with bookshelf speakers, whether it's a pair of bookshelf speakers in a stereo configuration or smaller bookshelf and smaller surround channels in a multi-channel home theater situation, you really want to stick to a forward-firing subwoofer. The easy way to explain this is because, you know, bookshelf speakers don't have as much bass extension. So in most cases, what you'll have to do is have a higher crossover frequency between the subwoofer and those bookshelf speakers. What that means is that the subwoofer now has to extend higher in frequency to blend with the cutoff frequency of those bookshelf speakers. Even though we know that bass is pretty much non-directional below a couple hundred hertz, I have always found that when it comes to the actual seamless blending of a subwoofer with a pair of bookshelf speakers, that the forward radiating, forward firing sub does a better job. Part of that could be that the extension at the very top end of the subwoofer, because if you set a subwoofer to cross over at 100 hertz, it doesn't mean that there's no output above 100 hertz. It just means it starts, you know, it's a 3 dB down point or however the manufacturer has defined it, and it will roll off with some slope. There may still be energy and information well up into the lower mid-range or even the mid-range coming out of the subwoofer. And a lot of that information is going to get lost if you're well off axis in a down-firing subwoofer with the woofer down near the floor. So that's my recommendation. Like I said, unfortunately, there's no simple hard and fast rule to say that one type of subwoofer configuration is better than the other, but just stick to forward-firing subwoofers if you're going to be blending them with smaller speakers. Thank you very much for your comments. I'd like to hear what you think if you don't mind sharing your experience. And as always, I thank you very much for watching.